All right, let's dive right in. We're going to explore a world where some of the smartest people on the planet, top scientists, tech innovators, believe their best ideas, well, they don't think they're entirely human. It's this strange, fascinating reality laid out in Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic, where UFOs, super advanced technology, and belief all crash into each other. So let's just start with the core question of the book, which is kind of mind-blowing. What if the people who are literally building our future, the innovators in biotech, the geniuses in Silicon Valley, what if they believe their inspiration is coming from somewhere else, that it's not entirely their own? Now, to really get a handle on this, you gotta push aside everything you think you know from the tabloids. This story, it's not about those grainy photos or crazy headlines. Nope. We're about to step into a completely different world, something called the Invisible College. And right there, that's the first huge point. You have to completely shift your perspective. The book pulls back the curtain on this hidden research tradition. We're talking about a group of scientists with, insane credentials who are taking the subject so seriously, way, way far from the public eye. And listen to the language they use. It's not just about keeping secrets. They see this stuff as sacred. I mean, think about that. They believe the implications of what they're doing are so big, so profound, that they can't just hand it over to the mainstream media. This is a community of absolute elites, and they're operating under a very strict code of silence. And this really shows you the caliber of people we're talking about. Take a guy like Jacques Vallee. He is not some fringe character, okay? This is one of the early architects of the internet, a super successful venture capitalist. Oh, and get this, he was the real-life inspiration for the scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's a central figure in all this, and he brings some serious credibility to the table. Okay, so let's peel back the next layer here, because this is where it gets even crazier. This secret research, it's not just a bunch of theories on a whiteboard. The people involved claim it connects directly to technology that is literally changing our world. And this leads us to this really extraordinary claim from a key figure in the book. He's an innovator who goes by the name Tyler. And he says, point blank, that his technological breakthroughs come from what he calls off-planet intelligence. I mean, that sounds completely unbelievable, right? But, and this is the big but, here's where it gets really complicated. That unbelievable claim is coming from a guy with a very real, very impressive resume. We're talking over 40 patents, a biomedical company he sold for millions. He's developing these revolutionary materials that human bone can basically read as its own tissue. It's this total clash, right, between this otherworldly claim and his very real-world success. And that's what makes his story so fascinating. And you know what? This idea isn't even new. Turns out the actual founders of both the Russian and the American space programs had some pretty similar beliefs. You have Tsiolkovsky, the father of Russian rocketry, who was convinced that ethereal beings were communicating with humanity through symbols. And then there's Jack Parsons, a co-founder of NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, who, believe it or not, used to perform rituals to try and contact extraterrestrial intelligences right before a rocket launch. So this link between mysticism and hardcore science, it's been there from the very beginning. So, okay, if these ideas exist within this small elite group, how do they get out? How do they move into the public consciousness and actually become something people believe? Well, the answer, more and more, is media. The book talks about this really critical concept it calls the total recall effect. And the idea is pretty wild. What you see on a screen isn't just entertainment. The images can be so powerful that they actually embed themselves in your brain as if they were memories. And sometimes they can even overwrite the historical record, what actually happened. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Can a TV show really change someone's memory of a real event? Well, let's look at one of the most famous abduction cases in history, because it's a perfect example of how this might work. Okay, check out this timeline. So back in 1961, Betty and Barney Hill have their famous encounter. Nothing's really described in detail for a while. Then fast forward to 1964, an episode of the TV show The Outer Limits airs, and it features this alien with these very distinct wraparound eyes. Now get this, just 12 days later, Barney Hill is under hypnosis, and when he describes the alien from his encounter, he describes it with the exact same wraparound eyes he just saw on TV. It's a jaw-dropping example of how this total recall effect might actually play out in the real world. And this is why a show like The X-Files was so genius and so important. You know its famous tagline, right? It started as "the truth is out there," but then it shifted. It became "I want to believe." And that little change says everything. The media isn't just telling you what to think anymore, it's tapping into our desire to believe. It's shaping the want itself. Okay, so this all brings us to our next big idea, and this one gets super personal. We're zooming in from these big societal ideas right down to the biological level. Because the theory here is that the human body itself is the interface. It's the antenna for this whole phenomenon. So how do you tune in? Well, our innovator, Tyler, he has this very strict personal protocol for receiving these signals. It involves a specific sleep pattern, this 8+1 thing. Then there's sun exposure, to literally charge his cells, and a whole hydration cycle. He's basically treating his body like a piece of high-tech equipment, an organic machine that has to be perfectly calibrated to receive information. And here's the absolute core of Tyler's theory. He believes our DNA can literally function like a biological antenna, and he points to this fascinating fact. The natural frequency of our DNA when it's all stretched out is about 150 megahertz, which is incredibly similar to the frequency used for satellite communication. The implication? We are all walking, talking, potential receivers. And look, he's not the only one thinking along these lines. Think about Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell. He was one of only 12 human beings to ever walk on the moon. 12. And when he came back from that mission, he was completely convinced that consciousness isn't just in our heads. It's a field of information all around us, and that we, as humans, can learn to tap into it. All right, let's step back and pull all of these threads together. So you've got this secret scientific research. You've got technology that its creators claim comes from non-human intelligence. And you've got a media landscape that's constantly priming us to believe it's all real. So what happens when you mix all that together? The book's argument is that you get the framework for a brand new kind of religion. And the parallels to traditional religion are just striking. I mean, look at this. In this new cosmic religion, who are the priests? They're the elite scientists and the tech innovators. What's the divine revelation? It's advanced technology itself. The scripture isn't some ancient book. It's the media we're consuming every day. Movies, TV, the internet. And the new sacred site, the New Jerusalem? It's Silicon Valley. And this isn't just some new, wild idea. Decades ago, the philosopher Martin Heidegger basically said something very similar. He argued that back in ancient Greece, a temple wasn't just a building. It was a sacred frame that housed the gods and organized their entire reality. Well, Heidegger suggested that today, technology has become our new sacred frame. It's the thing that fundamentally shapes our whole modern experience. So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this matter to you? The whole point is that our relationship with technology isn't neutral. It's not just a tool, something we can just pick up and put down. We're actually co-evolving with it. It is actively changing us. It's changing our memories, it's changing our beliefs, and it's even changing what we think is sacred. And all of this leaves us with one final, really profound question to think about. If technology is truly becoming a kind of conduit, a pathway to a deeper form of consciousness, then we have to ask ourselves, what, or maybe even who, is on the other end?